2, 1, go.
Okay, awesome. All right, so our first question is about open government. We're trying to convey what is sunshine in the government sense.
Okay.
And so why do elected officials hold their meetings in public?
Well, that's not true everywhere, but certainly in the state of Nevada and for the city council, county commissioners, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, we have the open meeting rule and law, which means that everything's very transparent. Never can a majority of elected officials who sit on a body have an imbalance of meetings prior to the open conversation that goes on. So for example, we have 6 wards here. Each of the 6 wards has a councilman or woman, and then I am the mayor, so that's 7 people. I may never, except in an open meeting in front of TV, media, everybody, may not meet with more than 2 of the councilmen at a time, because if I met with 3 and you add the 4th one, now we're a majority vote. So that is what the open meeting law does, and strangely enough, here in the state of Nevada, that meeting law, open meeting and transparency, does not apply to the state legislature.
Okay, we're not going to go there.
Okay, but it's an interesting thing for students as they are studying and learning. This is really, it's been very concerning to me, because everything, just for an example, and I have no idea how long your program is.
Take your time.
In my first term, my first year of service, 3.5 years ago, there was an issue I wanted to discuss. So I made appointments with all of the council personnel, 2 at a time. I did the first 2, it took me about an hour and a half. I then went to the second 2, another hour and a half. There was 3 hours out of my day. I got to the last 2, and somebody brought up a consideration. I had to go all the way back and start again. So I thought to myself, this is a total waste of time. You need to wait for the open meeting law to prevail and do it when you're sitting at city council, because otherwise you waste your whole time talking. We are not allowed to proselytize and ask for votes. But in fact, when you're trying to explain an issue, and there are always 2 sides, as you move around through the elected body, that's what's the great thing about the open meeting law, is because here comes something brand new that comes up at the open meeting and the conversation. So I have learned now in these following 3 years, I wait for city council. If a council person comes in to me, wants to discuss an issue, quite frequently they will say, well, what are your thoughts? I will explain thoughts, but I will never say how I'm leaning, because I know full well, come the open meeting at city council with all 6 other people putting in their opinion and maybe public comment, I may change my mind.
Okay, and that's...
So it's a positive.
Actually, that leads perfectly into the next question about why the city council and other government bodies take public testimony at these meetings, and does it ever change your mind?
Well, to start the back end of it, absolutely. But I think the most important thing is that quite frequently we're discussing issues that are part of our constituency, whether it's changing the designation on some type of building that can be put up, or it has to do with some type of gathering of groups that want to have a meeting about some subject. And so when you listen to their input, and you may have had a discussion in the council, in these 2 at a time or 1 at a time, quite frequently you get to see a better vision of what's out there. So the answer most definitely is certainly hearing from the private sector, and the public comment part of the agenda in everything is the time where we must be paying attention and listening. I will say, however, quite frequently, the council, and I can't speak for the commission or any other council, but there is a favoring, a plus, given to the council person for his or her ward, that they have already gone ahead, spent a great deal of time examining the issue. So they are coming with their presentation, and have already met with the parties involved and are trying to make it easier for the rest of the council to pass their vote. But we've had times that we have not deferred to that council person because the issues that have come from the audience or from the invested private party do change our mind.
All right. Now, when the city's actions are covered in the news, and this is specifically, let me explain the question. The question is, how often are important details left out? Now, the reason for that question, of course, is that reporters can't possibly tell the entire story in the time or the space that they are allotted to tell it. So the question to you is, maybe when you pick up the newspaper after a meeting and you say, they really didn't thoroughly get into the issues. How often does that happen, and what are your thoughts about that?
Okay, absolutely those things do occur. And I would say, first of all, when you go to the top of the mountain and you look to reporting, what is the purpose of reporting? In the most beautiful, honest manner, it's to give the readership facts and the truth. However, that is white paint drying. Not very exciting. And when you consider how do newspapers and much of the media make the dollar, it's off of advertising. So, oh, I'm so sorry. So here is technology, and I was purposely in off mode, but not to do that. Anyway, advertising rules. So if you have a newspaper or a magazine, you want the sales of that publication to be enormous. White paint drying doesn't sell. So alarmist, craziness, something intriguing, bizarre, that sells. So writing the truth, specifically upholding that truth, isn't always what is reported. I would talk about yesterday's article in our newspaper that had headlines of UMC, our University Medical Center, getting an F. Big, huge print. When you read the very last sentences of the article, you realize that the data wasn't given, that it was pay and play. We did not subscribe, we, the UMC, to this group when this came out. So it was only, you pick up the newspaper, which was a negative thrust. You think, oh my gosh, here's UMC, and it's the worst hospital in the country. When you read through the whole article, it had nothing to do with UMC, basically. It was data that was controlled elsewhere, somewhere else. The meeting, we weren't even involved in it, but I'm sure it sold papers.
Well, and so that ultimately now we're going to lead to my question about where to look to the original source, like public meeting records. But I want to But I want to follow up on this thought that you've brought up. Is as an elected official,
it's heartbreaking to me. I mean, we work so hard, and I'm very proud of the city. I'm proud of the staff we have. We're so thorough, so hardworking, and have worked through this recession, keeping our heads above water. I mean, it's been a miracle, but we have streamlined opportunities for businesses to come here and invest. We've been innovative and still building through all of it. And yet we need the buy-in, both from the social media as well as from the hard copy media, to be supportive and help us build. But because they have to sell, again, white paint drying does not sell. And so it makes sense. The more alarmist something is, the more interesting it is. The reality is, and you've touched upon it, because we are open meeting, you will get the exact facts. And certainly everything now, because of the wonderful technology and our website, you can first of all, you can contact any council person by using our technology, or just by making a phone call or asking for an appointment. All of our council persons, and myself included, we are about making this a safe and successful community, always looking for new ideas, way to keep ourselves the #1 tourist and convention destination, and we're known internationally. So our responsibility for facts is paramount, and that convention groups looking to come here, or people wanting to have a small meeting and do business, or tourists who want to come. They don't want to come here and find they've read something and it's absolutely fallacious. They want to come here and find out, oh my gosh, that's just what I read. There's nothing phony here. And so it's really, and it's up to all of us as elected officials to make sure that we are always delivering to the best of our ability accuracy.
Okay, now this is for the kids.
Okay.
I read a headline and I want to find out more about how did that come about. So please direct us to where we're going to go to find the original meeting minutes, and how do we find out what happened to when you pass an ordinance? What led up to that? We want to go to the original records.
Okay, quite frequently an ordinance is sponsored by someone. And the likelihood would be that someone would go online and find out, because it's all public information, public record. There are a variety of ways to get into that. One is first go to your computer and see what you can access that way. But if in fact you're having difficulty, again, you can, depending upon what it is, you can go to our city clerk's office. You can go to our legal branch that crafts most of the resolutions and ordinances, who will refer you out because they are non-judgmental, they are fulfilling a function. And you can always go to our public information office. Beyond that, you can go to the exact, if there's something happening in Ward 2 or Ward 6, and there's something that's intriguing there that they've barred something from happening, I would go right to that, find out what ward is this out here in this area, and then I would call up that council person's office or an email and say, you know, I'm really curious. I noticed that you have decided no cross lights on this street. Why? I need the information. What will happen then is one of the assistants will probably already has the answer to that, and will then pass it on to Public Works, who will respond that these are the criteria for having a red light or a flashing street crossing light. Yeah. And so, and then we'll pass that information back to the inquiring person, because each one of these council people, as does the mayor's office, have representatives that are basically constituent bent. Their job is to really work hard to do the best they can with the constituents, answer questions, direct them to get help. We've had many issues of people who are out there somewhere and have, who knows, a sewer main breaks. I mean, you don't want to live through that. What do I do? Where do I go? How can I prevent this in the future? And so that's the information, and we do our very best. And there are emergencies. And then if you live someplace that's vandalized, or you're having problems with burglaries, those are things we all want to know. And many of our functions are coordinated as well with the other municipalities and with the Clark County Commission. So we share, for instance, services with the Metropolitan Police. Our law enforcement is shared and funded by the County Commission and the city, and we share. So if there were a problem of something, you could go to either place.
In terms of records, though, I could actually, as a student, go back and read the public testimony, right?
You can read the actual ordinance. Oh, well, I mean, you could also probably, you can watch it on TV if we are replaying one of the city council meetings. But I think, too, it's just if you want to be doing research, that's what we're here for.
Okay.
It's time consuming,
Yeah,
but we do it.
You know what? I forgot about the TV. That's probably what they want to do. All right, the bonus question. This is the wrap up.
What do I get for this wrap up?
Big round of applause. Why should young folks want to follow the news and read what's going on, or listen, watch or listen to news to know what's going on in their community? Why is that important? You know,
you'll hear the stock answer always, you're going to inherit the earth. So that's a big reason why. And of course, going through those years, and as old as I am, I still remember very much those years, especially in middle and high school. And my thoughts were really quite directed other places. And to sit down and read the news or listen to the radio, there wasn't that much interest unless my family was involved and we were having a discussion. Another piece of it too is how the teacher that teaches the subject of history or journalism or English or part of the sciences, anything, it all interfaces. And when you have the good luck to have a great teacher, it takes you to another intellectual level of, oh my gosh, I never knew that. I didn't understand how the cost of electricity that my parents, I always hear them talk about, oh my gosh, the cost, our bill is enormous. What these solar energy panels are doing. Is that something, I love science and I love exploration and I also love numbers. Is that something I really want to get into? Or how does art interface? Why should I be paying attention that they put up some statue somewhere? Well, maybe that's what I love. Maybe I love art. Maybe that's something that's going to open a career path for me. So, you know, it's extremely important that the ear is tuned. And, you know, today, because of technology, I think were it in my day that it was available at that time, the same technology, I can't tell you, honestly, I would be doing much differently than texting and doing all the stuff that young people do today. At this age, looking back, had that been available and I'd done it, school time and self-growth and self-awareness and finding out who you are individually as a person, you need to put all that stuff aside. There is so much to learn, and the better you learn about yourself and what your talents are and what your interests are, and then you start to listen to the news and what's going on in the world, in the area perhaps that you're interested, or maybe in some other area that you're not interested in, you may find, oh my gosh, I never thought about that before. That's fascinating. I'd like to know about that. I mean, we just had this whole issue with our cowboy out, you know, on the BLM land, and do the students understand how the Bureau of Land Management owns probably 80% of the land in our state, in Nevada? They own it, the federal government owns it, and how the rights, our rights as human beings and residents, what are those rights? Or what are this farmer and rancher's rights? Does he have rights for his cows? You know, I mean, they're on the desert, for heaven's sakes. How much are they eating? Why should I pay that bill? Well, the rest of us are paying bills. So, I mean, there's the fascination from this as our young people in middle and upper school, where the brain is caught because we're beginning to know ourselves, we're beginning to find out about the world, and yet we are in this teenage mode. So it's very hard to get yourself off the social thing or something that really isn't helping you grow at all, and listen and learn what's going out there, because you'll be one step ahead of every other student that isn't listening and isn't learning. And you will then be able to focus more as you get further in high school. What am I interested in? I always hear people, you know, talk about how much money they make, and you make money if you do this or that. Well, is that something is that what I'm going to be about, money? No, I'd rather get up every day and love what I do. And I'm fascinated by film and the movies and entertainment. But I can't sing and I can't dance, and I'm not particularly good at long memorization. How could I get involved? What are the things that I can do in entertainment? Well, it's because of listening and learning and listening to the newspaper or reading, rather than texting and Facebooking and all that stuff, which has no gain, zero, to be able to be part of this. It is a great time to be alive because of technology and how it brings information to you so quickly, but you don't want to take off your brain and take over your brain and lose all this valuable time in middle and upper school to find out who you are. So when you go on, either right away into your field or in fact go on to college to further your education, that you've listened, you've heard, and you know. So it's a great time to be alive, and we are, because of technology, able to get so much information so quickly. But the key is pay attention to what's out there too.
Beautiful wrap up. That's the perfect way to end. right there. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Where the birthday parties happen, we were saying earlier.
Yes, exactly.
All right, you can tell me when you are ready, Kirk.
I know.
Okay, we're gonna start off with, before we get to the op-ed page,
Yep.
we're gonna start off with the general news organization and ask you how an organization like the RJ, how do you decide, and some days it's obvious and
Mhm.
it hits you in the face, but on days when it's not obvious, how does the newspaper management decide what story is more important than any other story? Is there a formula for that?
No, there is no formula or set of hard and fast rules in any news organization in terms of what story is more important than another or what makes a story more important. It's simply a series of judgment calls by both reporters and editors working together in a relationship to flesh out a story, determine its significance, determine if there's something beyond the obvious to the story, if there's more people that need to be interviewed in order to flesh it out. So it's a news organization. I liken it a lot to like the economy, for example. It's this series of individual interactions between sources and reporters, between reporters and editors, in determining what's newsworthy and what rises to the top, what story is going to be most interesting to the largest number of people in our audience.
Well, that brings me to a phrase I heard recently from somebody outside of the news business who said, if it bleeds, it leads, and that seems to be the number one conception on the outside of the news business of how people in the news business operate, for sensational value and for the purpose of simply gluing eyeballs.
I would agree with a small part of that, in that you're talking to a print guy primarily. I believe the way that television news sometimes cover crime stories, that they can tend to add this breathlessness to the story, to try to keep their audience members tuned in. But the fact of the matter is, no matter how many reader surveys we have done, public safety is always almost at the top of the list when you ask readers what's most important to them. If there's a crime story out there, if there's a homicide, if there's a horrible beating, people want to know, where did it happen and did it involve someone I know? I mean, that's something that's of great urgency to most readers across the board, to most news consumers across the board. And when you add the fact that your tax dollars support the police agencies that are charged with investigating and prosecuting these crimes, our government has tremendous power to take away our liberties. So when you add the fact that it is a function of government to uphold our laws and to prosecute those who violate them, along with the element in crime of that there are people out there who are willing to do us harm, you put those two elements of a story together, of course it's relevant to media consumers. I mean, nobody wants to see their house get robbed, no one wants to get attacked, no one wants to be shot, and if someone's out there doing these things, they want to make sure people are caught.
So when it comes to the more difficult to understand stories, and I'll give you an example, the Homeowners Association fiasco.
Sure.
That was a very difficult story to wade through and put the pieces together. There were so many moving parts to it. And yet, a huge story with
Yes.
amazing implications for people in this valley.
Yes.
What were the thoughts internally here on how important was that story and how to place it relative to the crime?
Well, I'll preface my remarks by saying that I wasn't privy to any of those conversations because I work on the opinion side of the newspaper, but I can tell you about the conversations that we've had on the editorial board side of why this was such an important story. First and foremost, in southern Nevada, hundreds of thousands of people live within common interest communities. They live in homeowner associations. where they pay monthly dues for a variety of services in maintaining certain elements of the property that they own. So the fact that you had corruption involving many of these associations is relevant. Telling all of these people exactly how a series of construction companies and lawyers managed to work together to control the boards that control the money that you pay into your association to get a cut for themselves is staggering. So that fact alone, the fact that if you were in a municipal area or a metropolitan area where, let's say, 5%, 2% of the population is in a common interest community, this story might have been less newsworthy. But when you look at just set aside Summerlin, Green Valley, that's like 200,000, 250,000 people right there who live in these master plan communities that are controlled by associations. So if there's corruption in large associations, it's relevant to a huge segment of the audience. And then again, going back to government's role in prosecuting this, you have federal prosecutors pouring a significant amount of public resources into investigating and prosecuting the crime. Those two elements together make that story rise above most others.
But a difficult story to explain in simple terms.
Yes, very difficult, which is why you in a story like this, you have to set aside more space. You have to set aside a lot of space to explain not only the significance of each development in the story, but it's the kind of story where we have the term boilerplate, where you have to lay down several paragraphs of background context, assuming that someone is picking up this story and reading it has never heard about this issue, is reading this story for their very first time. This is their first exposure to this particular story. You've got to give them just enough so that they've got the context they need to understand everything that's happened so far.
Okay, let's move to the op-ed page. Is that what we call it?
Yeah,
What I've always called it.
you can. There's the op-ed page and the editorial page. They're generally together in daily newspapers. The op-ed page typically represents the opinions of individuals, and the editorial page represents the opinions of the newspaper's management, the newspaper's editorial board.
And of course, what we all know about news
Yes.
is that it's supposed to be objective.
Correct.
It's not supposed to have opinions.
That's right.
So, and yet, this is some of the most interesting stuff in the newspaper.
Yes.
So why do we provide the public with, for instance, your opinion, the opinion of the board here?
Well, first of all, opinions are incredibly valuable to a newspaper, one, just in the terms of providing a little bit more interesting content, okay? In whether it's in columns or editorials or op-eds, opinion writing, you have a lot more flexibility as a writer to use humor, to instill outrage, to make the content more interesting for readers. But what's really more important about it is giving readers a new way to think about the news and providing them with a variety of perspectives on the news to make them consider their own opinions. Everyone has a reaction when they see any story in the newspaper. Some stories instill or create stronger reactions than others, stronger opinions than others. You present different opinions to the readers on that, and it makes them evaluate their own opinions and their own considerations and what's important about the story, and particularly in issues that relate to government and elections, which side they're going to take when they step in the ballot box and vote for or against someone or something.
Okay. As an opinion writer, what do you take into consideration? You're still a journalist.
Correct.
Even though you're putting your own ideas and opinions out there.
Sure.
So what do you take into consideration before you craft a piece that offers opinion?
For me personally, when I'm writing opinions, when I'm writing editorials for the newspaper, I'm writing about an issue where the editorial board, which is the upper management of the newspaper, and myself and one other person who does most of the writing and editing on the editorial page. We're looking for issues that are of great significance to the public, but that have outcomes that we believe we can influence. The point, generally speaking, of an editorial is to issue a strong call to action. It's to tell an elected body to do something or to not do something. It's to tell an elected official to vote for something or to not vote for something. It's to urge in some cases even a court, like the Supreme Court, for example, to take one particular side and not the other side. These are the things that we're trying to influence to create what we believe, to take steps what we believe will make this a better community to live in. But as an individual opinion writer, when I write columns that have my name attached to them and my face, I'm generally looking for topics that I believe are going to be just interesting to readers, that are on topics that they may not see somewhere else, that other opinion writers and news writers are not writing about. I'm trying to find a little niche to give readers something new and something they may not have thought about before, and something that's of great importance to them. I tend to write about things that make me mad, and I hope to get my readers to care about these issues by choosing the topics that I write about.
All right, and some of these things, is particularly the editorial call to action.
Yes.
That can earn the newspaper the ire of people out there in the community.
Correct.
Average readers as well as important people.
Yes.
And so, hence the claims of bias in the news.
Sure.
So talk about that for a moment.
Well, for as long as I can remember, and not just in Las Vegas, it happens in other communities as well. You see people who are not in ideological alignment with an editorial page claim that the editorial page is bleeding into the news coverage, that they're both one and the same, and it's not true. I don't have any influence over the news coverage of the Review Journal, and our news reporters don't have any control over the opinions that our editorials take in the newsroom, and that's the way it's supposed to be everywhere. Which is one reason why I sit separate from the news reporters, where I am in the newsroom right now. So there's a perception that because it's within the same pages when you buy the product, or it gets thrown on your doorstep, or you're accessing it online, that it's just all the same people contributing to these products. And that's not the case. But I certainly understand why some readers might believe that. Well, you're an editorial page that takes a libertarian perspective on issues, and here's a story about an issue that's of great importance that seems to advocate for a libertarian cause. You guys are biased. I mean, that's not the case. The job of the news reporters is always to be as fair as possible. And we make no bones about it that when we write our editorials, we're less concerned about being fair. If there's something that we think is wrong or right, we're gonna argue on behalf of that.
Okay, finally, this is the bonus question. Why should young folks read newspapers? I mean, they've got Twitter, they've got videos. Why should they? What's in it for them?
One of the most important things that about a newspaper in particular that you don't get off of social media is you have a large number of people within a news organization who have connections, who are involved in covering government institutions, social institutions, working together on a daily basis to try to establish some type of hierarchy to tell you, hey, we've had our noses out there all day sniffing around, and we think these are the most important stories for you. If you're on social media and you're out there, you can follow any number of people, and if they're not connected to some of the government institutions that we are connected to through a beat reporter or several reporters who cover them, you may not ever see that story. I still believe that a daily newspaper is your best way to get a sense of A, the most important news of the day, but two, the stories and the issues that have an effect on you. I don't know how young people tapping into social media, if they get a full sense of the broad number of offices that are up in election, if they're going to get the kind of information that they need before they step in a voting booth to vote, to cast an informed vote, the top of the ballot all the way to the bottom. Journalism in general, and newspapers in particular, create informed communities and enable people in those communities to have informed discussions between one another about important issues, whether it involves education or crime or government or social issues. So I tell young people all the time, you should at a minimum be spending just 10 minutes a day with a newspaper, whether it's on our website or looking at our print edition, just so you know what's happening in your city.
That is gorgeous. Is there anything else you would like to say?
No, unless there's something you think I'm missing.
You're wonderful.
Good, thank you. I'm glad you think that